Alright guys, maybe you've seen part 1, part 2. If you've seen part 2, you know that my wife called me. She just got off work and kind of interrupted the recording here. She didn't know I was recording, but I had to take that phone call. So I had to end the video short, but I'm picking up where I left off. So this is not going to be very convenient for folks watching this unless you just go to each video, but hopefully you can find them. So this is part 3 of this flight with commentary. So we've done the run up. I turned the taxi lights, landing lights off, strobe lights back off, and I'm going to turn the pitot heat off and the prop ISO off. So we checked the load, and earlier we did check the standby alternator, but we can do that yet again. Make sure the mixture's all the full up, full rich. Bring the RPMs back up to 1700 roughly, and now we're going to flip this alternator off and turn the standby on, and we're going to put the load meter right here on the secondary, and you see we're showing a load. Now it is maxed out because of all the electrics that we have on, but you can start turning some stuff off, and you might get that to come down. It should stabilize within about 2 minutes where it should be at. That'd be something you'd have to monitor if you were going to actually have to use the standby alternator. So it's got a huge load on it right now, but it is functioning because we can flip it off, and there it goes. Now we're just running off the battery. Alright, we'll put this back on the primary. Well, actually leave it on the secondary, flip the standby alternator off, make sure it zeroes out, then put the load meter back on primary and turn your primary alternator on and check the load on it. All on the while checking your bus volts. Let's turn this blower back on. And our navs.
American 2319 leveling 11,000, we've got Delta.
2319 approach.
And one more thing I like to do, depending on if left or magneto seem to run a little rougher than the other, let's just say it was the right, I will usually flip the magneto to the right. And I'll bring the RPMs up to about 1700 from there, and I will lean the mixture ever so slightly, increasing the exhaust gas temperature to nearly a peak. Which that is about where it's going to peak, which the exhaust gas temperature is right here if you didn't know. And what that's doing is that is burning off excess carbon deposits on the spark plug on the right magneto. So I might let that run you know, for 30 seconds to a minute, and then I'll increase the mixture and I'll put the magnetos back on both. RPM's going to climb, so we'll pull the throttle back. And let's just say you wanted to do the right magneto. Well, you could leave it on both, but I like to do them individually depending on which one's running a little rough. I'll bring the RPMs up, or the engine, the throttle and the engine RPMs up a little, and then I would lean the mixture again. Not too much. You don't need to lean it too much. But you can see, I don't know if you can tell, I just enriched it, but this exhaust gas temperature is fluctuating up ever so slightly as I pull the mixture back. There it goes. Maybe you can see that. I don't know if you can see that or not. Alright, so there's a peak. If I continue to lean the mixture, the exhaust gas temperature will fall, so I enrich to a peak, and I just leave it there for 30 seconds. This is not an extremely high power setting, so it's safe to do it like this. And that one's running nice and smooth. We'll go mixture full rich, put the magnetos back on both. We're gaining power, so we'll pull the power back, and now we're going to pull it all the way to idle, the throttle. and we're going to make sure the aircraft will idle.
Southwest 4199.
And it does. Check our alternator load, interbus volts. We'll bring the RPMs back up to about 1,000. Check your flight controls, make sure they are free and correct. Everything's moving. Check your rudders. Probably can't see it out there. Rudders working. And that's all just a flow. So we're going to look at the run-up checklist and make sure I didn't miss anything. We didn't check the instrument air, but it's working. And the standby gyro, it was working as well. Load meter test, primary prop amps, propeller heat, throttle, electric trim running. Check the autopilot disconnect. We've already done the flaps. We've already set all of our trims. Flight controls free and correct. Takeoff heading is set. Panel lights dim for takeoff. And partner, so we're actually ready to go. Before takeoff, mixtures set for best power, which here, this is a turbocharged aircraft, so mixture full rich all the way up through the climb, and then you would lean after leveling off. Let's see, oil temperature, minimum of 24 degrees Celsius, which we're in the green on that. That's the minimum on it. Air conditioners off, landing lights on, transponder in mode C. So we'll go over and put it in mode C or altitude. I'm used to calling it mode C. Take off, throttle, full power, brakes release, engine instruments check, landing gear. When no runway is available, it will come up. Flaps retract at 80 knots. Autopilot engage. All right, that's the checklist. So we're just going to go for it. Landing lights are on, strobes are on, taxi lights off, parking brake off, mixture's full rich, trims are set, controls are free and correct. I have no other traffic flying in the simulator. Flaps are at takeoff, so I don't have to worry about any other traffic. Pulling onto the runway, I see runway 4, magnetic heading of 4, HSI heading indicator is at 4. We'll hold the brakes. Bring the power up slowly. It's turbocharged, so you don't want to overboost on the ground, so pull it up slowly. Go ahead and release the brakes, and we'll go to full power. Right at about 80 knots, we will rotate. Winds from the left. Get a little aileron into there's 80 knots. We'll rotate right there. We're off. Tap the brakes. Everything's in the green. Go with flaps up. No more runway. Go with landing gear up. We'll bring the flight director up. And we're doing about 1,000 foot per minute climb, so we'll engage vertical speed and we'll engage heading mode on the flight director, and we're going to follow the flight director. That's 500 feet above the ground. Start a right-hand turn. And we're at max continuous power for the moment.
Northeastbound is the Cherokee 3,500.
And I am hand flying. Now we'll go ahead and pull the power back to about 2550 for this initial climb. Oh, not following the flight director.
Turn left directly to Beckley.
Going up to 6,000 feet. Clouds are not quite as low as the weather depicted. And we're going to, I'm trimming the ailerons a bit. Get everything nice and trimmed out good. Trimming the elevator, ailerons. That's pretty trimmed right there. We'll engage the autopilot. I just engaged the autopilot. Now Betty's flying.
697, approach, roger. Thank you for Foxtrot. Going to maintain 4,000.
Now the runway I was going to land on at Lebanon was it runway 1, I believe? So we'll just go ahead and put that in the GPS. While we're climbing at only 1,100 feet per minute, so that's pretty slow for this aircraft. We'll pull the power back just a little bit.
Wisconsin 3748, going to maintain 1,000.
And we're going to pull the props back to 2,500.
We have the airport inspect, 3748.
So that's a slow climb, which is what I'm looking for. We're going to reduce the vertical speed a little bit as well. Well, you know what I forgot? I didn't turn the pitot heat back on before I took off. But it's on now. And the landing light can come off as well. And hopefully I don't forget to pull the cowl flaps in. Not going through the checklist. Just kind of going by memory here. And we increase the cabin heat. It's getting a little chilly in here. And now that we're off the ground, we can actually turn the radar on. While we're still climbing, I'm going to go ahead and check the weather. Yet again. See, runways, looks like still runway 1, so the weather. Go ahead and put 2999 in the altimeter here so that we level off. It's going to be right about there, and we'll set it to standby. Right about there. Fuel looks good. We've got about 1,500 feet, a little less than 1,500 feet to go. And I'm just going to go ahead and but turn the HSI. Whoops, that's not the HSI. To my direct track. As you can see, we're off course originally, but I can fix that really quick. What we're going to do is we're going to flight plan, we're going to highlight Mike 54. It's 1,000 feet to go. That's what that beep was. And we'll do a direct to. Enter. And now we're on that course, and we are in GPS mode, as you can see. And you would also check it here. So we're in GPS mode. Now I'm going to hit the nav button. Now the autopilot will follow the track that I just gave it. We are nearly to 6,000 feet. So the runway we're going to be going for is runway 1, and I know there's a GPS approach or RNAV approach to runway 1. We'll have to look at the weather and make sure that we can get down the minimum altitudes on that approach. We can get down to the airport. We should be able to. All right, we're approaching 6,000 feet, so we'll start reducing the power. We'll put it at about 21 inches on the manifold. We're going to allow the aircraft to accelerate a bit, and if we're up over 140 knots, I'm going to pull the prop back to about 2,400 RPMs. And as far as leaning the mixture, this is a turbocharged aircraft. I'm not going to use this in this video. I can do a tutorial on how to use this to fine-tune your mixture leaning. We're not very high, so I'm just going to lean the mixture a tad little bit. And you can hear the engine RPMs, or the engine, the sound it's putting out indicates that it's more power is being applied. One way you can tell is right here. 175 HP, that's the horsepower. So watch when I increase the mixture. See the horsepower drop? Now I'm just going to lean the mixture just a tiny little bit. Now you can lean it to that horsepower peaks right there and then enrich it again, and it peaked at about 175. So there we go. I don't have to fine tune it too much. We're not at a very high altitude. So we're good there. All right, let's get our GPS set up for the approach. We're only 19 nautical miles away. So we'll go to procedure, select an approach, and we're going to do the RNAV GPS runway 1. Now, what intersection are we going to start at? Well, let's pull it up here. Let's look at the approaches. RNAV 1, let's overlay that. Okay. And we're currently right here. We'll do it at B&A. We'll start at B&A. We'll go from there. So I'm going to select B&A, and I'm going to go ahead and activate it. And the aircraft will immediately start a turn. Now normally, you know, you would turn your HSI in the direction that you're going, but I'm trying to talk through a bunch of this, so I'm just going to keep my heading bug over there. Now I need to start briefing the approach itself. Final approach course is 009. It's an LPV approach, and the decision altitude is 1,088, which is 500 feet above the ground. So I go down here to my radar altimeter, also known as a radio altimeter, and put 500 feet here. That's 500 feet. And I'm going to get rid of these yokes because they're in my way. Airport elevation is 588 feet. We already have the altimeter setting for the airport. Our touchdown zone is 588 feet. And you can read all this if you like. If I was actually doing this approach in reality, I would definitely read all this stuff. But we're going to be okay just for the demonstration purposes of the flight. Our missed approach altitude is climbed straight ahead to 3,000, direct to Latke.
Clear direct.
And
climb and maintain 900,000.
get away, go. I don't care.
Clear direct, climb and maintain 9,000.
Let's see here. Looking for altitude at B&A. So we need to start down to 3,000 feet. And we're going to stay at 3,000 feet from the B&A VOR to Oyota. And then from Oyota, we're going to stay at 3,000 feet to the initial or final approach fix. Wait a minute, is that the final approach fix? Initial approach fix of Jugup. I don't know how to say that crap. And the final approach fix is going to be, well, our intercept is at Cogsey. Cogsey. I think we just say that. I know, and that's at 2,300. So let's go ahead and step down. We'll set up a VNAV to be at 2,300. No, to be at 3,000 at this intersection, at this waypoint. So it's going to be this one. So go to VNAV. Because we will step down to the 2,300 after passing over this waypoint. And I want to be at that altitude. 0 nautical miles before getting there. I want to arrive at that waypoint at that altitude. So do that, and I want to descend at 1,000 feet per minute. And as you can see, we need to start a descent down to 3,000 feet. So we'll go ahead and pre-select 3,000 feet. We'll start a descent in 7 minutes. Now I have the vertical speed required up here on the display so that I can see that. So approaching 800, 900 feet here, we'll probably go ahead and start the descent. Let's look at the rest of the, well, actually let's get the
2845.
Getting all discombobulated here. My heading bug is not where it should be. 128 would be the next turn, which is pretty much already in the HSI. So you want to stay ahead of things here. And each one of these headings before you get there, you want to turn your HSI to it, and then as the autopilot follows it, you want to bug your heading bug over to it. We'll go ahead and set up, what was it, 009? The final approach course, 009. This is our final, by the way, this is our final waypoint to intercept. Yeah, this is a bit confusing for me because I'm not used to Jeppesen charge. I use FAA charts, federal charts. I don't use Jeppesen. The format of the layout of everything is different, so that's kind of confusing. So the lowest we can go is 1088, 500 feet. So we'll stick with that with this particular aircraft. We'll go ahead and get the approach course set up. We'll make sure the 430 is in GPS mode. And it's 009. So this will be our backup in case this one were to fail for some reason. We would immediately default to this one. So you're going to get the same indications on both. Turn left at 128 in 5 seconds, so we'll go ahead and bug over.
Thank you.
Here comes the turn. Here comes the aircraft intercepting the course. You know what I forgot? I said I was going to forget it earlier. Stupid cow flaps. So that's what you get for not actually backing everything up with a checklist. And while I'm thinking about it, we'll turn the auxiliary fuel pump on low, and I'm going to swap fuel tank to the fullest tank. We'll turn the auxiliary fuel pump off. A lot of pilots will take off and land with that auxiliary fuel pump on either way. Some of the POHs dictate that you're supposed to. You don't have to in this in this aircraft.
5001.
Now, if I was in a high terrain area, I would definitely be monitoring this, as well as this right here is basically this up here. So I would usually go to the terrain map and keep that up. And always keeping an eye on your temperatures. We're nowhere close to freezing, so we're good.
Flight 2852, climb and maintain 11,000.
Let's continue looking at the weather here. So make sure we're looking at the proper airport. Winds are 3407, 10 miles statute, 10 miles visibility. That's statute miles. Overcast at 900 feet, and the altimeter changed on us just a little bit. Temperature's 13, dew point's 11, so we will change the altimeter. Didn't change much, but just to be thorough. Let's see your flight plan. We're getting close, not quite there. Got a very low power setting just to give us a little bit more time on this. It's pretty heavy winds up here. Ground speed's 178 knots, and we're only doing 145 indicated. So. All right, we're 7 miles from the next waypoint, and the next heading is going to be a 011 or 0101. Let's put that in. Keep the heading bug where it's at. Approaching VNAV. What that means, we'll go ahead and start down. So we'll put it in vertical speed mode, and I'm going to descend at about 1,000 feet per minute. Now I'm turning the knob on my controls here, so you don't see this happening in the cockpit, but I'm actually, there it goes.
Imagine 833, contact center, 128.45.
And I'm going to pull the power back because we're going to pick up a lot of ground speed here.
Yep.
And since we are in a descent now, we're going to go with the mixture full rich. And we'll leave the props right at 2400 for now. just to continue to brief things and keep
Flight
everything
2186,
fresh in my mind.
climb maintain at 9
Missed approach altitude will be climb to 3,000 feet, straight ahead, direct to this waypoint, which is going to be up here. Latke. I'm not sure how you pronounce a lot of these freaking waypoints. I'm not good at that. Never have been.
186.
Some of them are easy, some of them are kind of difficult.
Airbus descending, leveling off at 10,000, approximately.
Minimum safe altitude for this airport, the runway on this approach is 3,400 feet. And I believe that's going to be within 10 nautical miles or 20. I'm not sure. It doesn't actually tell me on
Legion 529, turn left.
On this Jefferson chart.
330 vector
I'm saying, I'm not used to using this kind of thing.
Legion 529.
On the government charts, it's got this displayed down here, and it tells you how far out. So maybe I'm overlooking it here. Oh, need to bug our heading over to 101 degree. There we go. Now that we have intercepted it, pull the power back a bit more. We're going to go ahead and turn the HSI to our final approach course, which is going to be 009, which that's what's on the approach plate,
Turn left turn heading 3.
but it says 011 on the GPS. Always go by the approach plate. And we're 500 feet above 3,000. So we will be ready for the power to bring the throttles up when we level off. And we'll go ahead and get our landing lights on. Pitot heat's on, prop heat is off.
70, turn left.
Check our temperatures.
70 vector 4 traffic.
Now we're going to turn left to our final approach course. We'll go ahead and bug over. It's giving me indication it's going to start turning in 2 seconds. There it goes. And we're going to descend to 2,300 manually.
3,000 for
So go into vertical speed mode, and I'll descend at about 500 feet per minute.
Via the city set maintain 1,000.
Continue to pull the power back. Go ahead, we're below 154 knots. We're going to get the gear down. Go flaps to approach. And we'll go ahead and increase the prop all the way up. When we see LPV in the GPS, then we can engage. We're still in nav mode. We can engage approach mode. We're slowing, increase the power. So we're basically on instruments. You're not really doing anything but looking out the window. Coming up on 2,300 feet. Coming up on the final approach fix. We should have stepped down to 2,700, then 2,300. I didn't read that correctly, but it's fine. Bring our power up a little more. All on the while, watching our cylinder head temperatures at these slower speeds and moderate power setting. And it's getting warm in here. It's just 78 degrees, so we need to reduce the cabin heat a bit. Okay, now we have glide slope indication on the HSI, NAV1, and OBS2, which is NAV2. So we'll go ahead and go into approach mode by pushing the approach button. Now we'll follow the path in, the final approach course, and we're waiting for glide slope to couple in the approach mode on the autopilot.
Fatigue 8, 12.
soon as we intercept the glide slope and we get at least 300 feet below the intercept altitude, we will reset the altitude pre-select to the missed approach altitude of 3,000 feet. And right now is a good time to do a GUMPS check. So gas, mixture's full rich, we're on the proper fuel tank, undercarriage, landing gear is down, 3 green, and the prop is all the way up, and the S in GUMPS would be switches. So landing light is on, strobe lights are on, switches are all in their proper position, pitot heat is on, we don't need the prop heat, and we don't need the window defrost. So here comes the glide slope.
127.67.
Mr. Bill, 1767, Allegiant 59.
And it might not be a bad idea to open the cowl flaps about halfway. So autopilot's just going to grab the glide slope here and it'll start down. Ground speed's only 95 knots. Here comes the glide slope. It's coupled. Reduce the power just a little bit.
Join the 321 radio over zone navigation.
We'll allow it to start down. Go ahead and go. Normally you wouldn't go to flaps full until you got closer. So we'll just leave them in approach. Keep the power back so we don't pick up too much speed. Now we're looking for 1088 on the altimeter. So 1088 on the altimeter, which is 500 feet above the ground. That's our missed approach point, or our DA, decision altitude. Let's reset our altitude pre-select to 3,000.
2700, climb at 8,000.
Compass 549 departure, ready to contact, climb and maintain 9,000.
I maintain 9,000.
Already have the runway in sight. Just gonna let Betty do her thing. All right, we're getting closer, so we'll go ahead. We're speed checks. We go flaps full. Bring the power up just a bit. It's about 21 inches.
Air Shuttle 5988, climbing to flight level 210, traffic no factor.
Props full forward, mixture's rich, gears down, 3 green, and we're on the fullest tank. Speed's good. And at this point, we're coming up to the minimums, even though we're just now getting to it. I would go ahead and disconnect the autopilot.
I'm sorry,
So it's disconnected, and I would get rid of the flight director, and I would make sure the aileron trim is in a good position. So I'm trimming the aileron right now, and just making sure I stay on glide slope and the final approach course, and ever so slowly pulling the throttle back a little bit at a time. No yaw damper in this aircraft, so don't have to worry about that. Wind's from the left. Got a little crab into the wind. A little high on the glide slope. And you can see our we've gotten below minimum, so if we hadn't seen the airport about 100, 200 foot ago, we'd had to go around. These winds like to buffet you around right here.
Flight 2186, contact center.
So easing the power back. Trim as needed. Looks good. Get on the center line.
November, Victor, November, climb and maintain flight level 210.
Continuing to come down. Okay, power's at idle. We're in ground effect. We might float a little ways. This is a low wing aircraft. Take the crab out with the rudder.
126.45.
And manual wheels touchdown. Let the nose wheel come down gently. Get the flaps coming up. Pulling back on the yoke as we brake. Here's an exit, so
contact center,
brake kind of hard right here.
1329er.
Get the cowl flaps all the way open. Oop, gonna pass it. Pitot heat off, landing lights off, taxi lights on, strobe light off. Bring the engine RPMs up to about 1,000. We'll stop here, just clear the runway. We'll reset our trim.
49, traffic 1 o'clock, 10 miles, southwestbound company.
Both trims, for the most part,
descending out of
they're set.
1,700 for 10,000 higher when you're back.
And I'm just going to do like a flow check. Make sure everything's cabin heat looks good. Make sure everything is where I want it to be.
So, I've had a couple reports of someone like the occasional moderate drop, but nothing really worse than that. So.
We need to get the radar off.
Okay, that's about what we would call it too.
And transponder in standby. And it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I just can't stand to look at that. So I like to delete the flight plan once I've successfully landed at my destination. And if it's an unfamiliar area, I go down to this map view so that I can see where I'm going.
Boutique 812, contact center 132.9er.
Center on 132.
That's just a matter of taxiing in and shutting the aircraft down. Kind of feel like this video probably didn't help anyone. That's okay, I had fun doing it.
994 Mike Alpha departure, roger.
The grass airstrip right there. Alright, pre-shutdown. Turn our vent blower off.
Alpha 549 clear, direct Zapper, climb and maintain, flight level 210.
Don't need the radios, so we'll go ahead and turn the avionics off. We'll whip around here real quick and we'll just stop with these guys. They're telling me to come here anyways. We'll get our taxi lights off. Left. Keep coming, keep coming. Okay, and stop. Alright, there we go. Set our parking brake. Throttle to idle and mixture to cut off. She shuts down. Make sure the prop stops completely. Turn the magneto off, nav light off. We'll leave the beacon light on. Turn the alternator off and the battery off. We didn't turn the panel lights on. And that's it, folks. You can also pull the prop lever all the way back. And just for engine cooling purposes, you'd probably leave the cowl flaps open for a little while, but we'll go ahead and shut them. And you would turn the fuel selector to off. And that's it. Open the door and get out. You can't do it in this aircraft. It won't let you open the stinking door. You can open this though. That's cool. Oh, and you can move the armrest for really no reason at all. Just so you can move it, I guess. Anyways, I'm just screwing around now. Alright, that's it, guys. I don't know if any of that helped anyone, but I hope you had fun watching anyways. Thanks. We'll catch you later.